Hello, everyone. It is I, your host, your ghost host. That's not true. It's me, Nelson, and we're back once again with another musical tour of the Spiral. As I have been hinting, the musical tour of the Spiral, I think, is kind of wrapping up its main life. I have a few other bigger videos planned to kind of bring it to a satisfying conclusion, and then maybe we'll check in when there's some new content to talk about. But I would like to clear the decks a little bit so that there's time for some new stuff. But before we begin that final onslaught, I thought we'd take a look here at an often requested track from Azteca, and this is from the mountains, or the floating mountains, as it is sometimes called. The notes from the developer said, "We want to continue using the flute in this area. This needs some majestic intensity. Spoilers! The end of the world is getting much closer once we're at this level of Azteca. The meteor impact is not terribly far away, putting the most amazing glow in the night sky, the same glow that will soon turn into a blazing heat that will bring the most devastating fire, a fire that will consume everything and destroy mankind." Maybe they meant dinosaur kind. "And the world around them." So we knew that the end was nigh. Not unlike the musical tour of the... That's what I was given from the developers. Here's what I came up with. There's the ending, a nice requiem for the world of Azteca. So the composition of the entire world of Azteca in general was a very interesting challenge of write something that's beautiful and pretty while also, knowing where it was going to end up. And so you see this repeated motif of kind of a long build up into a sudden end. So these tracks... and then you just hear that echo after. those chords just cut off, there was no reverb tail after it, you would kind of think that it was all in your imagination. I thought I heard something, but now I'm not so sure. But with the reverb tail, it gives you a second to reflect and go, I knew something was there, and now I'm missing it, you know? My armchair philosopher composer technique coming into play here. And one music score that KingsIsle asked me to listen to for inspiration for this was James Horner's Apocalypto. I watched the whole movie to get steeped in sort of the lore and the background and gain an appreciation for a more minimalist palette here. Of course, run through the Wizard 101 filter with all the instruments and voice. There's a nice low synth pad in there as well from Absinthe, which they have not updated for a long time, but I still find these lovely evolving pads. It just sounds like, a whole world in one note. I like finding inspiration in those kind of sounds and building on top of it. I did know that I wanted voice to be pretty present in the world of Azteca. I did a lot of singing wordless vocals just to be the voice of the world crying out. Oh, there you go. That's without the reverb. Some double notes in there. I don't usually take this much time to develop an idea. I try to avoid it in looping music because if I've only got 2 minutes, which is the traditional length of a Wizard 101 looping track here, if I've only got 2 minutes to use, then, spending a lot of it on one kind of simple thought is a lot of time. But I felt like the whole world was one giant sort of inhale and kind of holding your breath and sort of, you're waiting for this inevitable moment to happen. Sad requiem here, and then like I'm saying, I want to get things moving, so get that harp. And that's my old school harp coming from the Contact Factory library. It's a nice sound. It's pretty dry. I've just done this big universe ending chords and all crying out into the celestial heavens. That's like crying out into the wet water, I guess. Crying out into the universe. I wanted to bring it home more so we get a little more personal with the harp. And a pan flute. Listening to Sounds of Azteca. You can see I tried an ocarina. The pan flute is very evocative for me of South America in general. There's a lot of percussion instruments and a lot of whistles, but they probably wouldn't have been, tuned quite to this capacity. But I really liked bringing that kind of beauty out. I knew I wanted to write something very pretty to describe the world, and it's sort of less. Getting pulled in again. If you're looking at a whole universe, you can get lost in the universe if you don't sort of compare it to something smaller. So this is another sort of James Bondy moment, I think, right here. So in the key of C minor, normally if you're going to go down to a B flat, the 7, you're going to play the B flat major. But it sounds really like the sound of that minor, because you're going between the C and the C sharp. They're going back and forth from the... which is where I get all that tension and release there. This is a technique I have a lot of fun with. I love delaying a resolution. So we're in G minor here. And then the real chord is just F minor over D flat. Pretty boring, right? It's nice. Got a little bit of juice in there with that major 7, but it doesn't have the crunch I wanted. It doesn't have the spice in it. For just a second, just wanted to, like, you know, indicate the pressure. It crunches back in and then it relaxes again. So we kind of first go to that. It's what chord quality is that? What emotion is that conveying? It's very hard to say. But then it resolves up to that F minor triad, which is really just part of that D flat major 7. Throw a little curveball in there. And look at that. So we've got this little minor 2nd in there. Cello's really driving home that delayed resolution. It's kind of fighting against the other low strings playing on that A flat. This little, right, tension and release. Little Hope Springs Eternal there. Highlighted this instrument in a while. This is from Embertone. It's a ocarina, very popular instrument since Link's Great Adventures in Zelda Land. But this one is really pretty, although you have to treat it a little bit carefully, because the thing about the ocarina that makes it sound so pretty is the portamento between notes. Right, that little doo is very evocative of the ocarina. But, well, now it's just sounding amazing. How disappointing. Sometimes it slides around too much, and because the tone is so pure, it sounds like a sine wave almost. It starts to sound a little synthetic. Looks like I even started out this melody with it. This is unheard. Let's take a listen. You can hear me approaching the melody a little bit differently because the ocarina doesn't speak real well. It also has a pretty limited range, and those notes just didn't pop out enough. I also probably tried it with the pan flute and went, oh yeah, that sounds, very Aztecian. I've always loved these chords that, you kind of lay out a big foundation of a chord and then jump into another register of the instrument. I think it's really neat how it's the same instrument, but it just has such a different flavor. You can see me accenting the low chords with some of this low percussion and some of that low synth sound. find that unlocks a lot of harmony for me because it's all about contrast, you know, low, high, low, high. You can really explore around a little bit there. The contrast is the point rather than, you know, trying to be careful of contrast because you want it to sound like it all belongs together. And then this overtone flute. I've used this a lot in jungly sections. Let's play it. So it's obviously very staccato patch here. And it's got a little bit of those overtone, the little ooh. Right? So I just find that repeating gives it a really neat, mysterious, yet primal, don't really know what's going on. It's sneaking around in the jungle. I don't know if it's going to jump out at me. That's a neat library from, I think it's 8DO. Yay, there it is. And see, I've purchased it. So here we're getting back to our main key center. C minor. These two guys are from Cinesample's library, the Drums of War collection. That earth mover just... It's like a gigantic elephant drum. And then I've got... That's supposed to say sub booms, as in like sub bass. In my mind's canon, this is modeled after the drums that the Fellowship of the Ring hear after Pippin drops the helmet down the well and they alert the black void to their presence, and then just, you know, ever so distant. It's not immediately a threat, you know, but it just brings terror right to you. It's like pretty soon something's going to go really bad for you. I'm realizing in the series that a lot of times I'll tell you what it reminds me of. That's probably the images that are bouncing inside my head, like my influences, the things that I've kind of seen and associate with a certain feeling or certain, you know, dramatic moment happening. In a lot of ways, we are this collection of the collective media unconscious, what composers have done, you know, before us, like me growing up on a diet of John Williams and Jaws, and just that, you know, the little semitone is terrifying. And I've used that semitone tension at the beginning there. It's all just rattling around inside my head, and, you know, I can bring it out and tell you about it, but unless you've kind of associated that sound with that feeling, maybe it sounds new to you. So one of the pieces of advice I like giving out is feed your ear, feed your brain as much as you can on the music that you find effective and the media that you find effective. If there's a game that you like and there's a moment in that game, that's going to stick with you for decades. To finish up, let's take a look at these tracks here. Adding this next note. Have you ever tried to just sing one note for a long time? It takes a lot of air to do it. I was trying to get loud at the end there, but not get totally out of control. You might notice the second time that I go through there, I sang it again. It might be tempting in this age of DAWs to just go, you know, I already sang it once and I like it. I'll just copy paste that. I won't say I've never done that, but if it's something, you know, relatively simple to do again, I'll do it again. I wanted this to really be a very organic expression of the chaos about to rain down on these creatures. And then here, this is all mostly one breath. Wow, that is a long breath. And it certainly looks like I might have cheated there and did this bit and then started this note back here and then cross faded them. I did want that as one note. There's just no place for a breath. Nothing would have sounded right for them to pause and take in another breath. I think that was kind of the sigh of that whole world just being destroyed. And that was kind of their last gasp, trying to sustain it as long as it possibly could sustain here. Usually what I'll do here is I'll sing each part twice. So these two guys are going to be the same part. These two guys are going to be the same part. These two guys are going to be the same part. And then I will pan out the sides to make it kind of bigger and wrap it around the listener. So the highest notes are going to be panned the most, and then the lower the notes, the more towards the center they get. There's still a little separation just to make sure that we still get a little bit of stereo width there. Can definitely hear me on one of these parts. I get running out of air and the support goes and it's and although that would be a very accurate depiction of what happens when you're running out of air, it wasn't really what I was looking for. I just wanted it to die away, just sort of inevitably has to disappear. To me, it's kind of like at the end of Infinity War where all the, spoilers, really? When they all speak in coded language. When Thanos snaps his finger, the thing that happens, it's like you would think it'd be like this big violent event, and it just sort of peacefully floated away on the breeze. That's kind of the same emotional sentiment I wanted. A little dark, I guess, but sometimes it's fun exploring that in art, probably much more so than in real life. All right, that's going to do it for this one, guys. I'm going to try and keep the release schedule going here and hopefully have some good surprises and some nice meaty content to finish this up. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you later. Bye.